This is All India Radio. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you a discussion on cyber security in India, preparedness, threats and challenges. The participants are Pawan Duggal, cyber security expert, and V. Ravi Kumar, AIR correspondent.
The growing internet base in India of over 90 crore users has created an attendant problem, that of cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is now considered worldwide as a new frontier for nations. The pandemic created a new work culture. As businesses continued to convert to remote work environments, hackers see more weaknesses to exploit. According to government data in India, there are over 3,700 cyber attacks every day in India. The recent ransomware attack in the AIM server has again brought focus on cybersecurity. Ransomware, Internet of Things attacks, cloud attacks, phishing attacks, blockchain and cryptocurrency attacks, bring your own device policies. These are terms that are bandied about these days, but few understand the import and the ramifications of these. In order to discuss cybersecurity in India, preparedness, threats and challenges, let's begin by understanding India's preparedness in the field of cybersecurity, something that has been dubbed as the next frontier by many people. So tell us about it.
Well, in India, cybersecurity has been by and large a neglected phenomenon. We as a nation have only been given lip service to cybersecurity, despite understanding that cybersecurity is something that could have a prejudicial impact upon the interest of the nation at large, apart from the sovereignty, security and integrity of India. First and foremost, we need to appreciate that today we do not have any dedicated law on cybersecurity. The Indian Information Technology Act 2000 is not a law on cybersecurity, though it has legally defined cybersecurity by virtue of Section 2 by the Information Technology Amendment Act 2008. But even the amendments to the IT Act in 2008 only came up with cosmetic provisions on cybersecurity. We didn't do much. Now in 2013, and India unveiled its national cybersecurity policy. Policy was a good policy at that point of time, but then India chose to let this policy be transformed into a mere paper tiger. India did not implement the national cybersecurity policy. And right now when we talk, we are all waiting for the government to unveil the national cybersecurity strategy, which is going to define the rights, duties and responsibilities of all stakeholders in the Indian context. That's what the legal framework is as of now on cybersecurity. Though now the government has come up with the Information Technology Directions 2022, which have come into effect from 28th of June 22, where the government has now mandated all companies, corporates, governmental organizations, network service providers, intermediaries, data centers to go ahead and report any cybersecurity breach, which is one of the 15 odd kinds of cybersecurity incidents, within 6 hours of your coming to know about it. Failure to comply with this actually becomes an offense under the IT Act, punishable with imprisonment and fine. That's the legal situation as of now. Secondly, we are finding that cybersecurity is right now a shared baby. So if you could have a shared baby, not only different ministries are going to go ahead and seek ownership of the same, but at the same time, there's going to be no holistic, uniform approach in this regard. Consequently, because we don't have any specific focus on cybersecurity, a lot of ministries are actually claiming ownership of cybersecurity, whether it's the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, or Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, or the Ministry of Home Affairs, or even the Ministry of External Affairs. So now in this kind of an ecosystem, you don't really give that kind of importance to cybersecurity that it ought to be given. And the time has come where India requires now a new approach to cybersecurity. In my recent writings, I've written that the time has come that India needs to have a dedicated ministry on cybersecurity. This similar lines as what approach Australia has followed in this regard. But right now, everybody talks of cybersecurity. Not much is done about cybersecurity. The kind of allocation of budgets that are required for making cybersecurity more prominent are non-existent. And that's the reason we find these recurrent, constant, frequent increases in ransomware attacks in Indian installations. In March 2022, we saw Oil India being attacked by a massive ransomware attack, which has taken so many months to come back to normalcy. And now recently the attack on All India Institute of Medical Sciences is the biggest ransomware attack in the history of independent India, where the data of more than many crores of Indians, apart from prime ministers, bureaucrats, politicians, judges, have all been taken away and are currently available for sale on the dark net. and an amount of 200 crore rupees have been actually asked as a ransom in this regard. So these are all wake-up calls that India needs to treat as wake-up calls and start coming up with a more holistic, effective and prudent strategy in the context of protection and preservation of cybersecurity in the Indian ecosystem.
So interesting. You mentioned that in terms of preparedness, you are saying that there is a long way to go. We need a strategy, definition of a strategy which is currently not there. And you're actually also saying you're proposing a dedicated ministry, probably like you said, is extant in Australia, and something that would focus, as you said, it's a shared baby. I was looking at various organizations, Defense Ministry, NTRO, CERT.in. There seem to be so many bodies which are talking various things about cybersecurity, and as you mentioned, it's a shared baby. So in terms of preparedness, you think it's a long way to go. And the threats. So we move to preparedness. We are very clearly that's something that needs to be done. I had just a small question. There is a data privacy bill that is upcoming. Does that have any ramifications, any impact on cybersecurity, or is that completely unrelated?
First and foremost, the data privacy bill is not coming. Instead, India has now come up with a draft Digital Indian Personal Data Protection Bill 2022 for public comments, for which comments have been invited till 17th of December 2022. And when you look at that particular draft bill, and when you compare that with the draft Personal Data Protection Bill 2019, which was introduced in the Parliament and then subsequently withdrawn in the earlier part of 2022, we find that there are some glaring deficiencies. First and foremost, in the context of cybersecurity, we find that there is no reference to cybersecurity in this Personal Data Protection Bill. To date, no protection of data can take place without any reference to cybersecurity. So currently, the bill has been drafted in siloed approach, thinking that we are in an island and we can only talk of data protection, and that therefore there's no need specifically to look at cybersecurity. So much so that even reasonable security practices and procedures that are required in the context of data protection have not been appropriately even touched. So that's one of the biggest gray zones. And when I also contradistinguish with the fact that India doesn't have a dedicated law on cybersecurity, this actually is a recipe for disaster that's waiting to unfold. And therefore, the quicker we are able to change our courses mid-course and make this law closely incorporating appropriate cybersecurity elements to make personal data protection more robust, more reliable, and more pertinent in today's times, I think we are heading in a direction where these kind of attacks on data are going to be on a daily basis, and we're not going to be very effective in our response mechanism to that.
So Digital India has been great success, and we talked about preparedness of cybersecurity, and clearly there are a lot of loopholes there. If you look at threats, the threats that these cybersecurity attacks pose to India as a country, I was just looking at some data that UPI, which is a huge success, it was launched in 2016, almost 6 years now. 12 trillion rupees every month is transacted on UPI, over 700 crore transactions. That is a huge amount, and of course it is based on a digital architecture. And I have seen often, if there is an error in any UPI transaction, there is hardly any recourse that you have. And sometimes that scares me, because we use UPI for everything from buying one bread for 50 rupees to even making larger transactions, and the recourse takes long. So this is just one example that I mentioned. Now I want you to tell us, what are the threats? We clearly see cybersecurity is a real and present danger. What are the threats it poses for a country which is growing at a very rapid pace like India, especially in the digital sector? So just let's quickly understand what is ransomware and what should anybody do if he faces a threat like this, a ransomware threat, briefly, before we carry out with other threats.
I think there are huge amount of threats that are staring us right on our face as we are racing towards a much bigger and a brisker economic growth. The first and the biggest challenge that India is facing is from ransomware. Every 11 seconds, a company is becoming a victim of a ransomware attack. Ransomware is a computer program that comes inside your system or device, often and invariably without your knowledge or consent, takes copy of your entire data, sends it back to the cyber criminals, and thereafter locks your data by a digital encryption algorithm, and then gives you a notification saying that I have locked your data by encryption. If you want the decryption key for accessing the data, please give me this amount of money. Invariably, the money is asked in cryptocurrencies like bitcoins, so that there's no tracing. And if you give the money, and if you're lucky, you'll get potentially your access to data back. But the problem is today's ransomware attacks are even more dangerous and potent, because the number of times we are seeing under the garb of ransomware, we are actually seeing wiper malware attacks, where these malwares are coming inside your system, posing as ransomware, copying your entire data, sending it outside to cyber criminals, and then deleting your data, and then posing as ransomware program and asking ransom for the same. And even if you pay the ransom, you are never going to get access to your data because the data stands deleted. And that's the reason why organizations across the world, including the Federal Bureau of Investigation in the U.S., constantly advise people against making any payments for ransomware.
These payments are typically made in cryptocurrency, I believe, when somebody has to pay ransom.
All payments in ransomware attacks are only made through cryptocurrencies like bitcoins. Why? Because they're untraceable and the movement of which cannot be tracked down for any particular cyber actor. So there's complete anonymity. And that's the reason why it becomes a bigger challenge for law enforcement agencies to identify who's the real threat actor who's gone ahead and implemented the said ransomware attack. Clearly, in the U.S., they've now come up with a new law which makes it an offense when you actually go ahead and make payment for ransom. In a number of jurisdictions, you are asked to now report how much have you paid as ransom. And therefore, globally, the new trends are that, look, let's not try to make any payment for ransom. Instead, let's try to focus more on cyber resilience. Let's try to go on our traditional thought processes of having regular, frequent, intervals-based backups so that in the event you become a victim of a ransomware attack, you can restore the data from your backup without having to pay the money.
So most corporates in India have something called as a business continuity plan, BCP as they call it. So why is ransomware such a big threat? Is it because BCP doesn't exist, or is it because it is not being implemented well? What is the reason?
The business continuity plan element is more a kind of international best practice. There is no mandate under the Information Technology Act 2000 or under the rules and regulations made thereunder, which makes it mandatory for organizations to comply with the same. So as such, it's up to you. You want to comply, good. If you don't want to comply, no problem, because the law doesn't mandate it.
So ransomware is a big threat. What are the other threats?
Apart from ransomware, we are having some other big threats in the form of denial of service attacks and distributed denial of service attacks. We have threats in the form of phishing, online financial frauds, and identity theft. These are major cyber criminal elements that I see on the horizon as far as cyber security activities are concerned. Another problem is the huge dependence on cyber crimes and cyber security breaches as a service model that's available on the darknet. Number of players on the darknet powering their cyber crime as a service model with artificial intelligence. It's not only getting more potent and effective, but is also threatening to throw up new challenges.
So the threats, Pawan, are clear and present danger, as they say in the US. What are some, quickly, if you could probably suggest, you already touched on a few of them, what are the solutions that we could look at as a country before we move on into the next year?
India has to do a number of things as a nation in the context of cybersecurity. India requires a dedicated new law on cybersecurity, which we don't have. Number two, India needs to have the amendments in the IT Act so that specific elements on cybersecurity can be appropriately amended therein. Number three, the new IT Directions 2022 look wonderful on paper, but on ground, it's going to be facing a massive pushback. You cannot always threaten people that I'm going to send you to jail if you don't report any cybersecurity breaches. So more innovative thought processes have to be thought about. Number four, more capacity building has to be done amongst all stakeholders to encourage them to adopt cybersecurity as a way of life. Number five, constant awareness, constant due diligence has to be the only mantra, and the constant vigil is the only price that you'll have to pay for enhanced cybersecurity. So all stakeholders have to come and join together. The private sector, the government, the academia, the not-for-profit, all have to contribute in this regard. And finally, everybody in India must be encouraged to adopt cybersecurity as a way of life, apart from India having a dedicated new ministry on cybersecurity.
Interesting recommendations there, Pawan. Dedicated new law on cybersecurity, amendments in IT Act and the new IT Directions 2022. Also capability building, you're saying, and constant awareness and constant vigilance. And you also say everybody in India should focus on this particular aspect and probably have also a dedicated ministry. Pawan, thank you so much for joining us. And it's always a pleasure talking to you. Very focused and clear answers. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on cybersecurity in India, preparedness, threats and challenges. The participants were Pawan Duggal, cybersecurity expert, and V. Ravi Kumar, AIR correspondent. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on our mobile app News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel News on AIR Official. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsttalks@gmail.com.